So next time we'll be checking out mattbatwings. I made a 3D graphing calculator with just redstone. This is someone who is doing something in Minecraft that I have absolutely no understanding of how they could possibly do this. And I'm kind of afraid because it's going to be scary as shit finding out how they were able to conceive of this to make not just a calculator, but a full-on 3D graphing calculator. And yet I'm also just here for this because it sounds awesome and stupid and I love every second of this. Let's find out how it goes.
Machine printing a sphere. A few hours ago, I typed in this equation, and now it's literally printing what that looks like. But that's...
Wait, so when it's doing graphing calculator, it's not just that, it's an in-game 3D printer. You can automate building in Minecraft.
That's not all. This machine can print nearly any equation you type in. From curved sheets to this saddle-looking thing to whatever this is, it'll print it using no command blocks and no mods. I've been dreaming of this project for over 5 years, and I'm happy to say that it's finally real. A 3D...
It took him 5 years to build this.
graphing calculator with just redstone. But how did we get here?
See, I was under the impression that this entire thing was not so much a 3D printer essentially in Minecraft, but just like altering where blocks were by moving them up and down to fit the graph, not building things to show what it would look like. This is way crazier than I expected. Does that mean you can just program in things to build a level for yourself? I don't... What?
Back in 2021, I was in college taking Calculus 3. This was my favorite calc class.
I was in college in 2011. I started my master's in 2012. I finished it before he was even in college. God, I feel old suddenly.
Because it started applying math to 3D space. In one of the first lessons, we saw what it looked like to graph equations that have x, y, and z. For the first time, I saw paraboloids, ellipsoids, and lots of other interesting graphs. That's when I thought to myself, what if I could build a graphing machine in Minecraft? Something where you could type in one of these equations and see what it looks like on a screen. Not only would that be the coolest build ever, but it would be a huge flex on my classmates.
Damn.
So later that night, I started researching. I looked at how graphing algorithms work, how programs like Desmos render equations, but it all got really overwhelming really fast. At the time, I had only built projects with 2D graphics, like letters or Tetris pieces. Rendering a 3D graph felt way
Someone just built Tetris in Minecraft? Yeah, that makes sense.
out of my skill set. I was too stubborn to completely give up though. The idea of graphing in Minecraft was just too cool to let go of. So after some thinking, I decided to make a 2D grapher instead. It would take in equations that have just x and y and display the graph on a flat coordinate plane.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, this was still a huge challenge. It was just a bit more realistic. 1 month of planning and building later, I actually did it. I finished what I called the TIMC, a fully...
I keep having to remind myself, these are not just screens, but the full 3D build, making everything. And it has to be done in creative mode, because if you're having to jump around on all this, oh dear God.
working 2D grapher.
And Harkin's also on 3D printing houses in Minecraft.
I didn't really know what I was doing, but it did work. And honestly, the way it worked was relatively straightforward. It all started with the input panel right here. This is where you would type in your equation, like y equals x squared, or x squared.
That's why, because they have the numbers over here for what everything means, so you know what they correlate to.
Panel right here. This is where you would type in your equation, like y equals x squared, or x squared plus y squared equals 20. After that, the entire rest of the circuit was for graphing. A graph is ultimately just a set of points. It's all the points that make the equation true. In y equals x squared, the point 2, 4 makes the equation 4 equals 4, so it's on the graph. But the point 3, 5 makes it 5 equals 9, so it's not on the graph.
I'm going to just point this out because this is probably obvious, but I just want to make sure everyone's aware of this. I was an English major. All of my math was algebra. And when I finished that in my very first year in undergrad, in community college, I was done. And functionally, I still needed that because, I mean, basic algebra is really useful for most everything when you're not in a mathematical profession, which I'm not. This is torture to me. Fascinating torture, but it's still torture.
So the TIMC used this fact and just brute force checked every point. For 10,000 integer points, it plugged it in, and if the equation was true, it plotted a pixel centered on that point. As you can imagine, this approach was extremely slow. Some graphs took over 30 hours to finish, and that was with the game sped up. It worked though, which was all I cared about. After posting it online, it went
30 hours? And I'm being told by Croc, and I'm going to pull this up so everyone can see exactly what kind of heresy he's saying here. This is elementary school level so far. Huh.
absolutely crazy. 500,000 views on YouTube, top of the week on the Minecraft Reddit, even articles written about it. But through all of that, there was still a tiny voice in my head saying I could have done more. I could have stuck to my original plan and gone 3D. Oh well, maybe in the future. Fast forward to now, and it's the future. I'm way better at Redstone, I've made tons of different projects, so
Did he just make not Tetris? I'm sorry. Yeah, no, he made Minesweeper. I just realized what I was looking at. He made Minesweeper. He made Pac-Man.
I thought it was finally time to give a
He made
3D plotter
Mario.
a real try. The first and most important question
He just made Mario and survived Nintendo. That's the more important part there. They are very much not fine with that.
was, how am I going to render a 3D graph? This is what overwhelmed me last time, so I wanted to be 100% sure I had a feasible plan. My first idea was to do a projection. Using fancy math, I could project the graph from 3D to 2D and show it on a lamp
Which is what I thought this was going to be.
I've actually done this before when I rendered wireframes back in 2022.
Yeah.
Unfortunately though, projection alone wasn't going to be enough this time. It worked for
Not enough
wireframes
detail?
because they were just hollow outlines, so it was relatively easy to infer their shape. For surfaces like spheres, that property goes away. It's impossible to tell if this is
It's just a
actually
circle,
a sphere
then.
or just a flat circle. Graphing programs typically get around this by using shading. When certain areas are brighter than others, the surface becomes much more legible. Shading felt like it would be pretty difficult with Redstone though, so I started looking for other display methods too. I asked my friends
Wait, so the giant pile of oh god why 3D printing sine waves was the easier option.
slow me if he had any ideas, and that's when he said, why not use a 3D printer? This was a genius idea. Using slime block flying machines, I could print a physical 3D structure of the
Slime
graph.
block flying?
No need for projection, shading, or anything like that. The only issue was that I've never done anything with slime blocks before. Actually, that's a slight lie. 10 years ago, I made this epic arm grabber thing, but besides that, I've never actually worked with them seriously, let
What's a
alone
slime
made a
block?
printer. I'm sure that with enough time I could make my own, but there's already some pretty good ones out there. So my plan was to just borrow a printer when it got to that point in the project. The other big concern was the speed. Remember, the TIMC took 30 hours in the worst case. That meant that with the same brute force approach and a 3D area, this 3D grapher would take 3,000 hours. Now realistically, I knew I could probably make it at least 5 times faster just from better redstone techniques, and I could also reduce the area to maybe 50 cubed instead of 100 cubed.
I just want to do a quick little bit of math here, and yeah, I know how weird it is for the English major saying he wants to do math. 375 divided by half a month. Okay. Also, Bill mentioned slime blocks basically hold things together like glue, and Harkins I was sticky like jelly. Oh, okay. Slime block is a block made of slime that sticks to other blocks so you can drag more blocks at once. Oh, that's actually incredibly useful. Huh.
Even with both of those
They work
speed
like
ups, the
pistons.
worst case was still 75 hours. If I wanted this to run in a reasonable amount of time, without reducing the area even further, brute force was no longer an option. I had to find a faster way. So I reached out to Sloimy again, and together we came up with a really cool optimization.
Running away screaming? Because that's where I'm at right now. The optimization is running away and screaming. In fact, I recommend that anything right about now. And Andre, 1, thank you very much, 2. With Redstone, you can make machines of war. Are there ways to actually create flying objects in this game? Because at this point, I'm wondering why people just aren't doing actual space battles. Because it seems like that's the next logical progression.
Before showing you the optimization though,
Stop.
let's clarify what my goal was for the 3D grapher. The user will start by typing in their equation, but not all equations will be allowed. For simplicity, my plan was to limit it
Why?
to the following form. A polynomial with one or more terms added together, where each term has an integer coefficient multiplied by some x to a power, y to a power, and z to a power, all between 0 and 3. For example, 45x squared minus xyz fits this form. The first term has coefficient 45, x degree 2, and y and z degree 0, because anything to the 0 is 1. The second term has coefficient -1.
Wait, really? Anything to the 0 is 1? Why not just write a 1? Oh, because it's stand-in for x and y axis, yeah.
And x, y, and z degree 1. The user won't need
And I'm being told by Kryn to check out flying machine bombers, because apparently everything I just asked about is something you can do. Oh, of course it is.
to type an equal sign, because whatever's typed in will automatically be set equal to 0.
Oh.
I did this because I knew it would make the logic a little bit easier. Instead of calculating two things and seeing if they're equal to each other, I'll just have to calculate one thing and see if it equals 0. This doesn't further limit the possibilities because you can always move the terms to one side. To graph y equals x squared, for example, just move the x squared over and type y minus x squared instead. After typing in the polynomial, the rest of the build will be for graphing.
There are a lot of words being used right now that are going over my head, but it looks crazy. Also, my one, thank you very much for joining for 16 months at Goatee Mod or Evil. Goddamn. Mostly because any Redstone machine will always be very easy to break. Wait, really? Oh, why wouldn't they just put something like an unbreakable block on it then? I'm assuming because when it's easy to break, they mean because they break it by not doing something in the correct order then.
Specifically, the goal will be to find the value of the polynomial for all integer points in a cube. From there, if any of those values are 0, I'll send those points to the printer, because those must be where the equation is true. Now we can get into the optimization. Here's the cube of integer points. X goes this way, Z goes this way, and Y goes this way,
The three
up and
axis.
down. If you don't like Y going up and down, don't blame me, blame Minecraft coordinates. That's what got me used to this.
Oh.
As you now know, the goal is to get the value of the polynomial for all of these points. But for now, focus on just one vertical column, defined by...
See, I'm not used to that because in 3D printing, especially with filament, there is a very strong Y, X, Z element, and Y is not the one I'm used to thinking about up and down with. That just feels wrong.
some x value and z value. Starting off
the
simple,
lines of
say the
Redstone can be broken,
polynomial you
okay.
want to graph is just y. In this case, the value of the polynomial in this column is pretty straightforward. It's just the y values, 0, 1, 2, and to generate these values with Redstone, it's easy. All you would need is an accumulator, or an adder on a loop. Start at 0 and make it add 1 to itself over and over again. This generates all the values 0 to 32 pretty quickly. Now say the polynomial is y squared.
Oh, okay. So their actual basic math is the number that you already had repeating, but added in with one more. Always adding one more, so it just keeps going up. Is this what it actually looks like when you build it with blocks?
To 32 pretty quickly. Now say the polynomial is y squared. In this case, the values in the column are the squares, 0, 1, 4, 9, etc. To generate these values
Redstone
with
gets washed away by
it gets
water.
a bit more difficult. They're not increasing by a constant amount, so you can't just use an accumulator. At least, that's what I thought. What me and Salome realized is that you actually still can. The squares themselves are not increasing by a constant amount, but the amount they're increasing by is. They increase by 1, then 3, then 5, and that amount is always increasing by 2. So we realized that you can actually generate the squares using 2 accumulators. Make the first one add 2 to itself every time, and make the second one add whatever's in the first one every time, starting at 1. This generates the squares perfectly, and amazingly, it's the same speed as before, because the accumulators are running in parallel. Going a step further, you can use the same strategy to generate the cubes. The cubes are not increasing by a constant amount, and neither is the second difference, but the third difference is constant. So with 3 accumulators running in parallel,
I wonder how many other people look at this and go, so we're basically discovering first principles of building computers at a large solid level, but through a completely artificial virtual medium. Because this almost sounds like if someone just wanted to make an old 50s style computer to get you to the moon, this is the kind of people you need to, because they would have the basic understanding of on-off style circuitry that could do this. Because you could probably take this understanding and just with basic electronics build a computer. It would be huge and take up like probably an entire building like the very first ones did, but it seems like this is a good way to make people learn first principles. Huh. And Martin, this is not a discovery? Sort of. It's not a discovery because it's known. It's a discovery because most people forget it. And for him, it's not a discovery? Yeah. But there's so many people working with Redstone that it would be learning first principles about this. And this is exactly how computers were made? Yeah. Which is weird that I know that part, though. I just didn't realize how close to actual it was. I thought there was more how to put it, an aspect of this is in-game logic that just let you skip steps, but no, it looks like there's no skipping the steps at all. Huh. And according to Siren, it is exactly what people have done, and they have work on real-world circuit logic. Damn.
You can generate the cubes in the same amount of time. This was
I wonder if we
already
could
an
3D print
insanely
these
fast
basic computers.
improvement. Back in the TIMC, graphing y cubed would multiply y times y times y for every point. But since addition is way faster than multiplication, these accumulators could probably generate an entire column for y cubed before the TIMC could even finish a single point. As you know though, polynomials don't just have y. According to my format, they could also have a coefficient, x to a power, z to a power, and multiple terms. At first this looked like a lot of added complexity, but after thinking about it, we realized it kind of isn't. Say the polynomial is 30 x cubed y squared z.
Yeah.
30 is just a constant, and because we're focused on a single column, x cubed and z are constants as well. Remember, x and z are what define the location of the column in the first place. If we're in column, say, x equals 2, z equals 2, then x cubed is just 8 and z is just 2. Moreover, everything that's not y, at least for a single column, is just some constant. So, assuming you've done a bit of initial work to get that constant, all you have to do from there is multiply all the values coming out of the accumulators by that constant. The naive way to do that is to just put a multiplier on the end and run.
So I'm going to see if I can understand this and dumb it down to me level stupid. What they're not actually solving is the number. They're solving the x and y coordinate and then the height. Because as long as they have the constant of it's at this latitude, this longitude, and you just figure out from there, the math is all where to go up. Huh. And Tarn, you want me to read your previous two comments? One was retracted, and the other was basically you're spot on. You just can't move some blocks with pistons, and you can do an equivalent of throwing a wrench in a servo, placing a block machine's case, the flying ones, water breaks redstone dust. Okay. Also, when I'm talking about first principles being discovered, we still have the first principle, but there's so many people who don't know what a first principle is. For example, you can learn how to build a computer. I did that, so it's entirely possible. But if you ask me how to make a microchip, and I'm not talking like from the 50s where you're like actually wiring it in there physically, but I'm talking like pulling out the cards and the individual chips that would be used within the nanometers, like nano micrometer, whatever it's called now, or lower scale, like how they achieve that with various individual bits of light bounced around to create things that are atom sized, if not smaller is what they're aiming for now. Because I think I did hear that they're starting to go on even smaller than full atoms and using technically subatomic, because like electron sized. I don't know if that's true or not, or it's just someone bullshitting, but there's some crazy shit up there, man. How do you do that? I got no idea. Partially because I'm dumb, and partially because those are probably trade secrets. But the first principle to get there is still the basic of what we're seeing here.
For all the values as they come out. This works, but since multiplication is very slow, running a multiplier this many times is not ideal. A better way to do it is to just multiply all the initial values by the constant before you run the accumulators. In the case of y squared,
so he's not just solving, here's one value and they hit that block. This is literally just how 3D printing works. You have everything solved on the layer, and then you just find out if everything on that height is turned on or not. Huh.
This means starting with 1 times the constant and 2 times the constant instead of 1 and 2. This does the same thing.
And Harkin, yeah, I saw exactly that
and
video.
Now the multiplication in hardware is just a little bit at the start instead of many repeated times. The only other thing to consider was that the polynomial could have multiple terms. In that case though, we figured the simplest solution was probably the best one.
Oh, he plays
Just use
ring.
many of these circuits at once, one for each term, and add their values together as they run. Putting this all together, say the polynomial is 2xyz plus xy squared, and the column you want to generate the values for is at x equals 3, z equals 4. First, plug in x and z, and do some initial multiplications to figure out what the constants are. The first term's y degree is 1, and the constant is 24, so I'll use a single accumulator and multiply its start values by 24. The second term's y degree is 2, and the constant is 3, so I'll use 2 accumulators and multiply their start values by 3. This one generates the values for 24y. This one generates the values for 3y squared, so added together, they generate the values of the polynomial for this entire column. Again, I have to stress just how fast this is. There's a bit of multiplication at the start to set things up, but once you run those accumulators, it's all just lightning fast addition. This meant that if I just repeated this process for every column, I'd be able to generate all the values of the cube very quickly.
It almost seems like this is really well done, but would he be able to speed it up some other way? I don't know nearly enough about the process to make any guesses, but it almost seems like that would be
With
the
an
next step.
exciting display method and high confidence in the speed, I finally started
Although maybe the actual thing to speed it up here would be the actual printing aspect itself.
building. I started with an input panel with a bunch of different buttons for all the different characters. A keypad for 0 through 9,
Yep.
3 buttons for X, Y, and Z, and 2 buttons for plus and minus.
Oh, wait, only
I didn't
plus
make
and
a
minus.
button to raise a variable to a power because I figured it was faster to just repeat the variable instead. Y minus X squared.
Even I know that's not the case. I mean, we have multiplication because so many written out aspects of plus and minus got tedious. We have powers because so many aspects of division and multiplication get tedious. It's all shorthand all the way down. That's all it is. Because if you write it out forever, it gives you a cramp. That's literally the reason we have all this stuff.
It will be typed as Y minus XX. It might look a little silly, but it's technically still correct. Plus, I knew the less unique characters I had now, the less work there would be later to parse the
Subtle
polynomial.
foreshadowing.
Then behind the panel, I made a circuit to convert each character to a unique binary
Oh, he
number.
color-coded it
0
too.
through 9 converts to just 0 through 9, and the rest of them convert to 10 through 14. Typing
Oh.
in plus, for example, outputs 13. Then I connected this to a character display.
Wait. Oh, and that's why it's like that, because he's doing it in binary. 0, 1. 2 is 0, 0, 1. 3 is 0, 0, 1, 1 for 2, because it's on. 4, 5. Okay, yeah, so it's all in binary code. On, off.
Typing in plus, for example, outputs 13. Then I connected this to a character display. This is the same character display for my QR code video. I just had to change the character ROM to match the new codes. Typing X puts X on the right, then typing Y shifts X over and puts Y on the right, etc., as you type the polynomial. And I also used some redstone blocks to permanently display equals 0 on the end.
Oh, so just
From there, I worked on
standard
parsing.
is just there.
Typing in, say, 12, multiply 1 by 10, and add 2. Then when you type 3, same idea. Multiply 12 by 10, and add 3. So in Redstone, I implemented this with a multiplier looped back on itself. When you type 1, it multiplies the 0 by 10 and adds 1. Type
And when we saw earlier the various stacks, he actually wrote physical stacks in here.
2, and it multiplies by 10 again and adds the 2. Type 3, and it does the same thing again, and it becomes 123. And the beautiful thing about this circuit is that it's not even a typical hardware multiplier.
Huh?
It's actually just an adder, with 2 shifted versions of its output being plugged back in to multiply by 10. The other main idea was for X, Y, and Z. I had to convert.
My head is hurting. It's crazy and cool, but what the hell, man? Also, Croc, all regular math is plus and I'm assuming you meant minus there. Everything else is a variation of this, is adding negative. Or adding negative, yeah. Division is multiplication of fraction, etc. Yep. All math is adding and removing. Just with a lot of bigger steps for a lot of bigger things. And then we get into the stuff that's imaginary.
Sequences like X, X, Y with 1 Y.
Yeah. So if he knows where he's looking, they light up to show that things are in the right order. Oh. Bill, I saw your comment. I'm refusing to read that one.
Now I could build me and Sloimy's column generation circuit. I knew this part would have a lot to it, so before starting anything, I made some levers to just hold the value of X and Z, or the current column. Eventually I need to loop through all the columns, but it was easier to just focus on one first.
Blocks.
As you saw from the explanation, the first step is for each term, figure out that constant, where the constant is just all the stuff that isn't Y. Now, powers could be between 0 and 3, so in the worst case, this implied 6 multiplications to find the constant. That's not a lot, especially considering this is for an entire column, but I actually still thought of a way to make it even less. Since there were only 4 possible powers, I thought, why not make a lookup table? I could plug in X or Z and the power, and get the result pretty quickly by just looking up what it is. Usually lookup tables have too many entries to be practical, but in this case, even if x or z spend say 100 different values, the table would only need 400 entries. Not a big number for Redstone. So after
That's not a big number! So this right here is a small one?
few hours
Okay.
of work, I made this beautiful lookup circuit. Thanks to
It
Sloan's
is
tips
pretty
on the
cool looking,
design,
though.
it turned out even smaller than I thought it would be. This input here is
What does a big one count for? Ooh, also, Grim, you upgraded to the membership to Beardly Beardington? Thank you very much, man. That's awesome.
for the value, and this input is for the power. Putting in, say, 17 to the power of 3 outputs 4,913, or 17 cubed. I duplicated this circuit for both x and z, and now there were only 2 multiplications to find the constant. So
And I know why this looks familiar to me. Yeah, he's essentially reading this in the same way you would read some of the initial lights before a graphic user interface came up. So it'd be like knowing what lights mean what on the old computer displays.
I grabbed a very nice multiplier created by STA3, and I put in the logic to do those
Purple, people have actually made YouTube viewing possible in Minecraft with Redstone. My bigger question is, how did they get access to the internet through Minecraft to do that?
2 multiplications for every term in the polynomial. To show it working, I'll put in the same thing from the animation, 2xyz plus xy squared with column 3, 4. When I press this button, it takes a little bit of time and calculates the constants, 24 and 3. The more fun part was the accumulator circuit. The actual design of the accumulator circuit is not very complicated, so normally I'd just whip this up with the first adder I could find and call it a day.
Oh,
But
he
its
just plugs it
importance
right
to
in.
the overall speed
Oh.
made me spend a lot of extra time
Okay, I didn't realize those were actually printed out. I thought they were just placeholders, but no, apparently it's literally just the actual basis for the entire system. He just added on top of it.
on it. This circuit would be doing most of the work,
Oh.
so I knew its speed would massively affect the speed of the whole build. I ended up building for hours, testing lots of different adder designs to find which one would be the absolute fastest for this. And then I realized something hilarious. The fastest design was sitting in front of me the entire time.
Oh.
Remember the multiplier from STA3? It turned out that the adder inside of it was exactly what I was looking for. I ripped it out, and after just 10 minutes of world editing, I had a final design that ran at just 4 ticks per cycle. I know
Okay, so he's doing world editing. I thought he was placing every block. I mean, he still probably has to the first time, but if he has saved states, then he can copy and paste them in. That's a little less terrifying. I say little because everything about this still feels like I'm looking at someone's fever dream.
all the real life hardware people are laughing right now, but trust me, that is an insane redstone speed for what it does. Let's generate the squares so you can see what I mean. Start this one with 1, start this one with 2, and run.
Oh, they have the numbers on them
1,
too.
4, 9. Yeah, it's hard to even stay with it out loud. The only downside with this circuit was that it was weirdly difficult to reset. Typically, I just use comparators to cut the signals and reset the loops, but this would have added an extra tick of delay, and I was not about to go from a 4-tick to 5-tick cycle just to be able to reset it. So I was
Tick?
forced to use my arch nemesis pistons to cut the signals without adding any delay. And you know what? This gave me some respect for pistons. They may not be great at logic gates, but they're pretty good at stopping loops. From there, I duplicated this whole circuit and hooked it up to all the terms. If I put in this equation and column from earlier again, you can see the first unit generates 24y, and the second one generates 3y squared.
I just realized what this reminds me of. It looks like a data center. Like just the rows and rows of hardware doing parallel designs, but for ever expanding tasks, which is probably because that would be exactly what this is, just taken to a even further degree.
The rest of column generation was pretty straightforward. I built a big adder chain to sum all the
I refuse to use the word straightforward in this. I refuse to use that. That just, it feels on a fundamental level, nothing about this counts as straightforward. It's like I was here every step of the way of him explaining it, and yet at the same time, I feel like I've missed every step.
terms together as they run, and I built a column of lamps here to record the output. After all the column values come out, these lamps just display which ones
Also,
equal
tick
0.
is an
With column
event refreshing
generation
world
done, I
data
could
for
finally
blocks.
loop through
Okay.
all the columns. Anytime I have to loop through values, my normal go-to is a binary counter. As you saw earlier with the parser, these just count up when you press the button. And when they get to their highest value, they naturally wrap back around to 0. So I brought in 2 binary counters, one for x, one for z, and connected them together. So at the start, x counts through all its values, while z just stays at 0. Then when x gets to its highest value and wraps around, z counts up to 1. And this pattern repeats itself until it loops through all possible pairs of values. I hooked this up, and just 10 minutes later, I could generate all the columns in the entire cube with a press of a button.
Oh.
This was really coming along nicely. I have to admit something to you. I've been lying. It is true that this generates the column values, but these lamps here are not for showing where the values equaled 0. Back when I was building the TIMC, I was under the impression that plotting where it equals 0 was a great idea, but when I actually tested it, I found a huge problem. For graphs like y equals x, it looked fine, but for curved graphs like y equals x squared, there were these huge missing pieces. This happens because both the graph and the integer points are infinitely small, so the
Because we're not actually looking at the points, we're looking at the extrapolation between the points. And it would only graph when it hits a dot, which means he has to do smaller than them. Oh.
only points that work are where the graph goes through them exactly. My instinct to fix this problem was to create a range. I thought instead of testing where it equaled 0, maybe I could test if it was between, say, -5 and 5. But this still had problems. It made the graph thicker or thinner in different areas, and it was still possible to have missing pieces. Getting frustrated, I talked to my dad about the problem, and he suggested I use a completely different approach. Instead of testing where it equals 0, test whether each point is positive or negative. Then form a new grid of pixels using the signs as the new corners. If any pixel has a mixture of positive and negative corners, you know it must have hit 0 somewhere in that pixel. So, plot it. In the other case, when there's 4 positives or 4 negatives, don't plot it. Testing this method revealed it looked perfect for any graph. Y equals x, y equals x squared, even a rotated ellipse. So this is what I actually implemented in the TIMC. By the way, this was only possible thanks to my friend John DeFun. He made the amazing circuit to plot mixed signs. So for the 3D grapher, my plan from the beginning has actually been to apply this same method to...
Oh yeah, because we're still looking on the principles just to get the 2D aspect down. Now we're still moving to the 3D part. How far can he take us beyond just graphing the calculator? What will come next?
Of each little cube and print any that are a mixture of positives and negatives.
How far can he take this
IRL?
IRL?
These lamps are not where it equals 0. They're actually the signs. And now my next step was to implement this algorithm.
Actually, I'm wondering if the next stupid but doable aspect of this would be for someone to get a custom 3D printer that could print metal, which is a thing you can do, for reactive and non-reactive, well, essentially printing out boards so that you can start doing these things in real life. Because at some point, it seems like you're just making a 3D printer that you could then copy over into an IRL building and then have it print that IRL building its own copies of itself.
To get the real outputs
Probably a weird
for the
thought,
printer.
though.
This is when the project started to make me want to hit the ground too hard. Comparing 8
Only here? Oh, I'm sorry. I would have done that part like 20 minutes ago.
signs of a little cube is not a difficult thing, but having to do it for every possible little cube was just breaking my brain. No matter how I imagined it, it seemed like there was no good way to do it with a combinational circuit. I was going to have to get creative and process the signs sequentially. So after a lot of thinking, I came up with, thankfully, a pretty good way to do it. The idea was to use 2 giant memory banks.
Wait, Croc. I'm going to pull up your comment because that actually is fascinating. So someone, okay, this hasn't loaded yet, but it's really simple math electronics with building blocks. 1 cubic meter. This guy looks like Ben 10 had an Enderman transformation. And Croc, it is done IRL. So someone has printed out all of these things from this video IRL, or something similar to it IRL. Yeah, I mean, just an exploded computer. Explode in the sense of blown up to a much larger size. You can just have an instant printer in the oven. Yeah. Also, they have 3D printers that are resin-based, but cure immediately on printing. They're meant mostly for color right now. So you can do the basic cyan, green, orange, purplish, yellow, whatever. And then you just create images like that so they have depth. But theoretically, if one of the elements was metallic and just would conduct and everything else didn't, with just 2 colors, you could 3D print a circuit board theoretically. It would be at droplet size, which is not small enough for more advanced electronics. But you could do it. And you could do it with base hardware now. Hell, you could do that right now with just a 2 nozzle printing setup. Or a 1 nozzle if you're willing to waste a lot of it.
As the columns of signs start to generate, I'll fill the first bank with the first plane of signs, and fill the second bank with the second plane. Then I'll use a circuit between them to find any cubes with a mixture, creating essentially an output plane, and I'll send out these columns to the printer. Then I'll shift the second plane over, and fill this back up with the third plane of signs. I'll run the circuit again to get the next output plane, and send those columns to the printer again. I'll repeat this process until eventually the printer has received all output columns. After reassuring myself this would work, I went ahead and built the redstone for it. Since it got pretty big, I'll just show you a little scale model of how it works. As the first plane of signs come out, I quickly unlock and relock repeater locks to shift the columns into the first bank. Then as the second plane comes out, it naturally pushes the first plane over to the other bank, because both banks are just one big connected shift register. Then for the circuit between them, I used a bunch of repeaters and torches to detect mixtures of signs. For any individual little cube, if all 8 corners are 0, the repeater part is off. If all 8 are 1, the torch part is off. But in any other case, when it's a mixture, neither of these lines are off, so the AND gate lights up. Obviously this wasn't the simplest thing to build ever, but apart from some silly mistakes, I didn't run into too much trouble making it. I do have to...
You know what the worst part is? If you just make a mistake and accidentally delete something without realizing it, out of all of this, and you have to go and try and bug fix this, that is a nope, delete everything and go back to the first one and copy it over and start again, because it's easier than redoing a single block missing. Like, one mistake, one accidentally destroyed block without realizing it, and you're screwed, man.
Credit my friend John DeFun again though. Studying his original 2D circuit was the only way I was able to make this in 3D. I was a little bit disappointed by how big the memory banks ended up being. Then again though, this is nothing compared to how big a combinational circuit would have been. If anything, this is actually proof that slowing it down to work on only 2 planes at a time was the only realistic option. But yeah, once everything was tested and working, all the actual columns for the printer came out right here. Finally, it was time to steal some redstone from people smarter than me. 3D printing has been a thing in the community for a long time. The first one I personally saw was by Ilmango in 2015. For each layer, it used flying machines to drop concrete powder into water, instantly turning it into concrete. Then you would just drain all the water afterwards. Also, by the way, I have...
Shit, that's basically how it works in regular 3D printers, specifically resin. You have a liquid suspension where things are held and they pull it from that because it cures instantly when it's exposed to light. But still, it's very similar.
To show you guys this, I was just rewatching his video and he said,
maybe that's an option if you would want to have a 100 by 100 3D printer, but yeah, who needs that?
Yeah, who needs that? Since this video, there have been many printers made over the years, so I had lots of different options, but I kind of already knew which one I was going to use from the beginning. This one, from Slomi and Pingu's terrain generator. It's really clean, and it's already designed to print column by column. It all starts here with a tower of concrete powder. This is where you create the column you want to print. Wherever you power these pistons, it pushes the powder into a water stream and turns it into concrete. The powder then falls to replace the holes for next time, and it gets filled back up with this powder funnel at the top. The column also needs to have a block on the bottom for the printer to work. This can be anything, so I'll just make it glass. Once the column is ready, this first giant flying machine gets sent out and pushes the column until it rams into the second flying machine, at which point it just leaves the column there and goes back. Then this second machine gets sent out and pushes the column until the glass on the bottom hits this bedrock edge, at which point it also just leaves the column there and goes back. This process repeats itself until the entire first plane of columns is filled up. Every glass on the bottom continues to hit the previous one, making the columns pile up perfectly. Once the whole plane is filled up, the second flying machine automatically shifts itself to the right by 1 block, so then it'll start filling up the next plane. And yeah, it just keeps filling up planes like this until every column has been printed. The elegance of this printer kinda blows my mind.
Because it does everything on a single plane all at once and moves to the next one. I thought it'd be printing up, but no, it's going horizontal instead. I knew there was a lot of complicated things you can do in this, and why are these blocks all just kind of glaring at me? Okay, this is... According to Magnetar, someone made a city printer in Minecraft with the Create mod. God damn. I'm wondering if in the future when the people doing this stuff decide to apply it IRL, we're just going to have some like, hey, how do we build a city on the moon? Someone played Minecraft and figure out how. And I'm not expecting that to be anything less than utterly true at this point. I fully believe it'll happen.
Like, yeah, I don't know how these flying machines exactly work. Shout out again to Pingu for making them. But their tasks are so clear that I feel like I don't have to. It's just all so clean, and it kind of looks like a real-life 3D printer. After a few hours hooking this up, the build was almost done. I just didn't like this red floor. I wanted it to look like the grid you might see on a real program. So I changed it to blast furnaces and put in obsidian for the axes. Also, I replaced the funnel with a repeating command block because I was tired of resetting it. I know, I said no command blocks at the beginning. Hopefully you can forgive me because it's the exact same functionality. Then I started running full tests, which unsurprisingly revealed so many issues. This was a unique build in the sense that every single part mattered. They were kind of all in one big chain, so if any of them failed along the way, the print was not going to succeed. This made the debugging process
Okay, did anyone else notice that? Like, just right here when he looks down.
So if any of them failed along the way, the print was not going
You can actually see as his entire system slows down on this. And with how much he's running, that's a lot of simulation, man.
to succeed. This made the debugging process pretty miserable. I just kept telling myself, at least it doesn't take 30 hours to run. It took 6 hours, which, okay, is still a lot, but I was thankful for the few tests I could run every day. Once it was all set and working, I realized I had just one last problem. I don't know that many cool equations. So I asked for some ideas on the Summer of Math Discord, owned by the math YouTuber 3Blue1Brown. And let me tell you, these guys delivered. They even showed me this cool website that classifies all the different kinds of graphs I could make.
I didn't know they even have websites for just cool
shapes. I just want to quickly say thank you again to everyone who helped me out. Sloyme for help with the optimization and all kinds of miscellaneous stuff, STA3 for like 80% of the internal circuits, John DeFon and my dad for help with the original sine algorithm, Pingu for the flying machines, and Sloyme again for the logic of the printer,
and who's the
anyone in the Discord calls giving me tips, and of course everyone watching this who makes these projects possible.
Dude. It looks like a math city, essentially. Which I kind of think it is. That kind of fits. Oh man, I can imagine just how amazing a time lapse of this would be. Also, just going to pull up your comment quickly. And it didn't load. But what I'm looking for is, yeah, here we go. Fun fact, in Minecraft Education Edition, you can unmake materials into elements. Redstone is a combo of an unknown element and uranium. Oh, of course it is. Wait, can you make nukes in Minecraft? Early technical automation mods, like pre-craft stuff, were what inspired Factorio. Yeah, that fits. And because Flashback doesn't like 5 GB files, here's a full time lapse recorded the normal way. 7. Oh, dear God. That's still fascinating to watch.
One of the biggest reasons I build these projects is because they trick me into learning about nerdy topics along the way. But don't get me wrong, if you want to learn about these topics too, you don't have to spend a month building a graphing calculator.
It only took him a month. He's saying that like a month is a long time. I'm looking at this and going, nah, that would be a couple years. Like, I was expecting to hear like RT's 6-year server timelines. Like, yeah, I've been working on this for a couple years at this point. I finally finished it. Like, maybe not all the time, but it's been a while. Like, a month. Only a month.
The much better way to do it is with today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is an educational platform that puts a ton of effort into making lessons fun, visual, and actually about learning instead of
God damn. Like, this is awesome. This is fascinating. I love everything he did, but I am in awe of both the fact that he did it and that there's just so many things he could do. I want to know what the bug fix looks like on this, because People said it's very easy to break redstone, so I'm assuming someone definitely broke something, and I don't exactly know what, but oh dear God, it must have been torture to find out that bug fix. And he did say things went wrong. And Martin, do I want to study math now? No, I will stick to the English language, thank you very much. Because if you fuck it up there, you only accidentally start wars. Wait, what? Still, it is fascinating to see the work behind something, so you can pull out all of this just to make that graphing function of a 3D print in a game to make that function that way. And then you look at something like, hey, your computer, whatever you're watching this on right now, what would that look like if it was pulled out for individual blocks representing every single process? It does kind of recontextualize just how insane technology is when you see it blown up and this is a scale representation of just what a graphing calculator looks like. What would it look like if you do something even more crazy? It would be absurd and kind of fascinating. It's just really damn cool, man. So if you haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.